Welcome back to TMOLR Texas. I hope you've had a chance to go back and look at the first video in this series. It debuted or premiered on YouTube about 10 o'clock this morning, September 16th, and we're going to be continuing with part 2 of this discussion that I had with the Brazoria Heritage Foundation. And in this particular episode or this installment, I learned an incredible amount of information, specifically when it comes to the decline of Brazoria in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and some of the things that also led to a bit of a shift in Brazoria County from the town of Freeport being the commerce center to what is now the commerce center of Brazoria County, especially southern Brazoria County, which is Lake Jackson. And we talk a little bit about the plantations and the ranches and things like that, the rivers, and just a lot of information that's learnable and that I learned from the great people at the Brazoria Heritage Foundation. So buckle up your seatbelts, get ready to learn a little bit more about Brazoria and Brazoria County. So without any further ado, let's get into the program. When or what really caused that decline of the town in the 1900s?
They say the railroad, which I don't believe, because the railroad ain't that far from the old town.
No.
And they said that's what caused the decline. I think what caused the decline was the end of plantations and et cetera.
Okay.
And the ranchers that took over the land and the state that took over the land, the state took over 7 plantations in this county and made them prison farms
right.
from the plantations. And the rest of the land was taken over by the ranchers, and the ranchers could care less about preserving anything other than a ranch,
Right, they didn't care about the town.
They didn't care about it. And I think the money went away. And the other towns, Houston became big and popular.
Right.
So why go to a hotel in Brazoria?
Yeah, when you can.
Yeah.
Even well, now. I was talking to a gentleman. It was probably 2 years ago, I guess. He's from Brazoria County, and he was telling me that Freeport used to be the center of commerce.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Everything was in Freeport, and Lake Jackson was just like a camp.
Went to the shopping.
That's in my lifetime. I'm 59 years old.
And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
No. Weingarten's built a store in Freeport. I don't know something.
Right, yeah, and he did mention them, yes.
We went every weekend to Weingarten shopping.
Yeah.
And buying clothes in Freeport and et cetera. And Freeport killed themselves just like other towns in Brazoria County have by being stupid. Being really dumb.
Well, yeah, I guess there's really no other way to run it.
They've run every company that was there out of the state, out of the place.
Now I don't remember what year it was that they had the big train derailment.
Here.
Was there any damage over here from that, or?
No, it was actually about 3/4 of a mile west of town.
Okay.
And where it actually left the tracks was in more of a cow pasture area.
Okay, because I
laughed about that because like up in when they had this one up in the East Coast, train, and everybody's suing because of toxic chemicals and whatever.
Right.
They have a train wreck here, toxic chemicals spill all over everywhere. Nobody even thinks about suing.
Well, I mean, they spent like maybe 2 minutes on CNN.
Right.
On it. I think I was visiting my stepfather up in North Texas, and I'm like, kind of freaking out. Mom and everybody else is down here, and they spent 5 minutes on it. And I called Mom and said, "Hey, are y'all okay?" "Oh yeah, we're fine. It's just it's not around us. But
no, I don't know. That's just my theory about how Brazoria failed. I think it was economics, not the railroad. I don't think the railroad.
And that's what I've read. That the railroad was the reason.
Yeah, I have too.
Yeah, that's everything.
I've read it several times.
That doesn't make sense to me at all. But
And it really doesn't, because what you see in Old Town and then where you see the railroad here, there's pictures that we have in the hallway across that Old Town had already started transitioning this way before the railroad got there.
Right.
Yeah.
Smith's store set kind of where the fire station is now. In the picture of Smith's store, you don't see the railroad in there.
Well, Bill Gordon's hotel there was here before the railroad, and Bill Gordon had a hotel there on Market Street. And it was there before the railroad.
Yeah.
So I just don't think the railroad caused the failure. I think just economics of the area, you know, went from being rich plantation owners to.
So I guess with the more modern growth, closer to present day, it seems kind of stagnant.
Very stagnant.
Yeah, I mean, well, I worked at Red Top. My first job was at Mr. Gaddy's, and
Now you're telling me, right?
yeah, well, I'll be 50 in October. So, when I was still in high school, you had Mr. B's right there at the corner of Red Oak and 36, and then Buc-ee's came in, and I'm sorry, I wear the fact that we had the second Buc-ee's ever, like a badge, and I'm Texas history all the way. So, but it seemed like it never wanted to go up population wise, and there's so much land. I got into town probably about 9:15, and I drove out 36 to 521, went turned around right there where you go to Sweeney, and there's land there, and I know it's a floodplain and everything like that.
Actually, that's not in the floodplain.
It's not, okay. But the thing, there's two things that just stick in my craw, and I don't get it. Is you have the original mouth of the Brazos, and then you got your secondary mouth,
right,
thanks to Dow, right? Okay, but the San Bernard has been destroyed. And my personal opinion is it's because of that second mouth that Dow wanted, that redirection along 288.
Dow didn't do the second.
They didn't?
No.
Okay.
No, because they did that before Dow was here.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
false information on that one too.
On Dow, they did that.
Okay.
They did that because of flooding of Freeport.
Right.
Velasco,
Okay.
And they decided they could keep Freeport and Velasco from flooding, but the Corps of Engineers made a huge mistake.
Okay.
But the other thing about that is I still don't believe all that either. That was done in what, 1939?
Something like that.
Dow didn't come till 1941. He didn't show up on the coast at all.
Okay.
And I fished in that river, and I rode boats up and down that river all my life, and it didn't plug up until the last few years, last 20 years, started plugging up. The Brazos River has been diverted for a long time.
Okay.
And why is it plugging up now?
Well,
why is it plugging up now after all these years? I don't know.
One of my mom's best friends, they used to go fishing along the San Bernard, especially right there at the mouth. She's like, you can't even get to the mouth through boat now, unless you're on a John boat or like a kayak or something. Yeah. And I'm looking at the map.
It was always blowing some sand in, but not as much.
No, it just
as it is now. Well, so I don't know.
Just like when you cross it over on Blacks Ferry Road in Peach, that river is so dadgum narrow.
Yeah.
And then you've got all of this water coming from closer to 36. It goes right into those neighborhoods, and I imagine that it does eventually dump into the San Bernard. But that's, during Harvey, my mom's place, it was about a foot from the front door. The water was.
Right.
And I'm just like, this is ridiculous.
Well, a couple of things have happened. One, Katy got big.
Okay.
And they dug a 20-foot deep drainage ditch, 20 feet wide from Katy, Kipperillo did, from Katy to the Bernard River.
Okay.
So it could rain 10 inches in Katy, and we're going to flood down here.
Right.
I've seen it happen. We didn't have a drop of rain, and it flooded down here.
Well, it's the same with, if it rains up at Possum Kingdom,
Right.
And they're out and they release that water through the dam.
And
It's
also,
eventually going to get here.
And also, when I grew up, there were like maybe 6 houses on the Bernard River between McNeil Bridge that you crossed over and the mouth.
Right.
Maybe before you got to fishing camp at the end.
Right.
And now there's hundreds of houses.
Yeah.
Hundreds.
Yeah.
And every one of them are fertilizing, and every one of them are running their sewage toward the river, even though they say they're not. And also, Phillips 66, when I was a kid, they had barges one after another running up and down that river all the time. And everything was operated on shell. All the roads were shell.
Mm-hmm.
There was a shell hopper out there, and barges loaded with shell would come up through that river and unload, and we'd pick them up in trucks all around the county and spread them on roads. And I think the lack of barges running into that river, the lack of flow, and also that river's fed by a spring up by 59. It's called Blue Hole.
Okay.
And it's a county park now.
Right.
And that spring, it's unbelievable. It's like you like go to Guadalupe or something. Cypress trees and the whole bit. Blue water, called Blue Hole. Beautiful place.
I'm gonna have to go check that place
Right?
out.
I'm writing that down.
Yeah.
That spring has been running like 20% of what it used to run 50 years ago for 40 years. So it's not pumping the water because the water's being sucked all up and down out of the aquifer. And that spring's not pumping like it did. So to me, that's all cause it.
Okay. Okay.
That's just me.
No, but that's valid. That's I mean,
we ruined the balance of the river.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Harvey was such an eye opener.
Right.
Yep. Levee issues over there by Columbia Lakes, and and my one of my uncles lives in Freeport, and you can stand in his front yard and you see the levee right behind the next row of houses, and there's the Brazos. Nothing happened.
I came back down here after Carla. I was in college, and I came back down here. We rode down to Freeport and rode up on the bridge, and all you could see is tops of roofs and houses.
Yeah.
Carla was worse than RV, but
wow. Now Brazoria did have was kind of its own independent school district at one point, right before it joined with
prior to the 60s.
Prior to the 60s. Okay. Right. So we had elementary through high school.
Correct.
Here in town.
We're not
through the
8th grade.
They contracted with West Columbia for the
but it wasn't.
But it wasn't.
It wasn't CBISD at that time.
The consolidation took place after the high school in West Columbia burnt down.
Okay.
And the West Columbia district didn't want to go out on their own for bonds with the possibility of losing Brazoria students if they ever bought their own school.
Gotcha.
So that's what brought the consolidation.
Okay, so it was financially based.
Right.
Okay.
I think the high school ended here. I can't find proof of it, but I think it ended here sometime between 1929 and 1932.
Okay.
Something like that.
Great Depression era.
Built for 8th grade.
Right.
And they had to pay for us to go to high school in West Columbia. Had to pay a fee.
Wow.
Because we weren't in the district.
Right.
And the money for this district came from Jefferson Lake Sulphur Company, which was a company out south of town here, and from Mr. Prepsel, who owned a bunch of property, had gas wells and oil wells and etc. Jefferson Lake moved in 1958, and Mr. Prepsel quit paying taxes in 1958 to the district and to the state and to the government, and just refused to pay taxes, and so the district didn't have any money. So they almost had to consolidate.
Right, okay.
Ran out of money. But they paid, I heard the figure, $125 a student for us to go to high school a year to West Columbia.
Wow.
Yeah. We were 1 through 8th grade in this building.
Right. When is the Santa Ana Ball?
July.
Third Saturday in July.
Third Saturday in July, okay. Are there any other events coming up?
Our next big event that we sponsor
Well, we have the pumpkin patch,
Well,
but
we
that's
have
not
the
really historical.
pumpkin patch. It's not really historical. It's more of
Henry
a
Smith
give
Day
back
in
to the
November.
community.
But see,
But-
that's important too.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
But our next big event that we have, other than renting the facility, is going to be Christmas in Brazoria, which is the second Saturday in December.
Okay.
Well, see, that's another thing about this county too, and I've been fighting for 20 years. Is Harris County, Precinct 4 and Precinct 2 have buses that they'll let churches and whoever use to go on trips
Right.
all across the state.
Right.
Come to Brazoria County, come here. Brazoria County has 0 buses, nothing. And the last county commissioner, I told him, I said, I'll vote for you if you get me a tourist bus for the county. Hey, yeah, I'll do that. Well, he's been there 10 years. I ain't seen a tourist bus yet, you know. But we don't have them. We don't promote our tourism. There's nothing to see down here.
Oh, but there is.
is.
There is. This place is so rich in history, and that's why I wanted to do this in the first place, because you've got the old 300, and I was driving around yesterday, and I'm like, we do the old 300. Okay, they usually do it over a weekend, right? Why is it not all month?
What?
Why don't they do it for the entire month? It's the foundation of where we're standing or sitting right now.
That's right.
And why is it
Made everything possible.
Exactly. And
Including
it's
them.
a weekend? That's it?
That's it. Yeah, I took a group out. Stephen F. Austin had his sister had Peach Boy Plantation, which is out there. He had a plantation called Durazno that he was going to marry his cousin Mary Austin Holland, and that was going to be his plantation site, going to build a house there. He died before that happened. So he willed it to his son, his nephew, who was 12 years old. His nephew died when he was 14, so it ended up with Emily. She gave it to the Bryans. The Bryans built a plantation house there. It's a National Historic area, got a National Historic marker on it. And there's nothing there because the original house burned down, but the foundation is there, the chimney's there, the livery stables is still there. You have to have permission to go in. But I took a group in there, a bus load of people in there, and stood there and told them about the history of Durazno. They were absolutely blown away. And it's there. It's there. There's a cabin out here past Fort Forest called McCarthy Cabin, built in 1800, long before Stephen ever came here. He was a fur trapper and a Scottish fur trapper, and the cabin's still there, and it's fixed up. Got a marker. Nobody knows about it. Nobody sees it.
What was this place called?
Marsky Cabin.
Okay. Wow.
Add it to your list.
Yeah. I mean, oh my
And if the
Lord.
Jordan plantation ever gets finished, it's the only really standing plantation house other than Hog Mansion, which is not really the original, but it's only still standing. If the state ever really finishes it and draws tourism out, it'll help us tremendously.
So this needs to go to the state level.
It is at the state level.
Well, but I mean,
what
the push
happened-
needs to be
What happened when it
continued
went to
there.
the state level is now they're going to build. They remodeled the house, but now they don't want to let anybody in the house. So they've got the house you can look at, but their deal is all about slavery. And so now they appropriated $6 million to build a visitor center out there that's going to be totally about slavery. Now, anything about the Jordans other than they were bad people, but it's going to be totally about slavery.
Well,
I can't help
okay,
it that
so
we were that bad.
I mean that's like the hot button topic right now.
Yep.
Is
What's trending?
racism and things like
Where's
that.
money?
And look, it's an abomination. Okay, but with that history, even though it's bad, and slavery should not exist in any way, shape, form, or fashion, but if you discount that history, you discount the contributions that those individuals
Exactly.
made to the construction not only of the state but of the nation.
Yep.
They built the bricks.
You're minimalizing,
And
you're
to-
marginalizing
and to the
what
world,
they
and to the-
did.
and to the world.
Exactly. So why are we minimalizing it?
And
We need to
hard
know,
to
at
get-
least know about it.
The only reason we're a state and not a republic is because we were selling cotton to England and sugar to France, and we were fixing to get real rich. And we were rich. The people that owned them were rich to begin with, and the United States sitting there looking at us saying, "Whoa, wait a minute!
Yeah.
We better stop this, or they're going to become stronger than us.
Yeah.
Because they're shipping all the cotton and the sugar to these foreign countries." Levi Jordan was the one shipping it, and et cetera.
Well, I don't know if there's any real truth to this, and I still, in my mind, it was the truth. But during World War II, I had heard a story that Hitler was actually fearful. He was quaking in his boots because he had heard a rumor that we were sending the Texas Rangers to go get him. And I'm like, I don't care if it's true or not. I'm running with that one. I'm running with that one.
At that particular time, the way the Texas Rangers were organized, there could be some.
There could be some truth to it. Now, there's
You
so
grew
many.
up in Freeport. That's another thing. I think the original start of the Texas Rangers was probably Captain Jones, who they organized to go kill the Caracas down here at Jones Creek.
Yeah, Battle of Jones
Stephen
Creek.
F.
Yeah.
Austin organized it.
Yeah.
I think that was probably really the true beginning of the Texas Rangers, but that's not in the Texas Ranger Museum.
Oh, heck no. No, that's Brazoria County.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
What would you want the legacy of Brazoria to be? What would you want Brazoria to be known for?
Well, I think the only thing it can be known for is the history between 1821 and 1900. Since then, it's been going down.
Our foundation is set up to preserve the history of Brazoria and its gift and predominance of creating Texas
Right.
and
Yeah.
separation from Mexico. That's kind of the era that we're in.
Okay. Because
I think, if I was going to do what you're doing, what I would do is I'd start with Steve F. Austin, and I'd start with John Austin. And I wrote a couple of articles. I wrote one on John Austin, one on James Brown Austin, Stephen's brother.
Right.
Somebody ever heard of?
Right.
And he came here on the Lively with John Austin.
right.
And he and John were in business together. The mercantile business, they owned the cotton gin, et cetera, et cetera. And nobody's ever heard of James Brown Austin. And I wrote it.
That's a new name to me as well.
I wrote
You know?
The Lost Austins, and there's a bunch of them. And I'd start with those, and then work up from there, and work through those 6 people: James Fanning and Henry Smith and Anson Jones and Neil Pickett and et cetera. We've got a lady down here in our room that was a doctor here from 1896 till 1925. Dr. Sophie Ordzar worked for the railroad. Extremely important woman, doctor in Missouri. In
Absolutely.
1900.
Yeah.
You know?
I came across her
Yeah.
a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, "Wow, this is amazing."
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly. You just have to work through those characters one at a time and work through the thing. And I think some of them are making a mistake. We went to a meeting the other day, and they're trying to rebuild Fort Velasco, which is fantastic.
Yes.
And we're trying to make Brazoria important. West Columbia's trying to make West Columbia important. And you sit there in a meeting and you listen to them say, well, more important things happen here than happen in West Columbia. More important things happen in Brazoria. It has to be about Brazoria County, not about West Columbia, Velasco, Brazoria. Get off of that.
Well, pardon my French, it's not a pissing contest.
Right.
That's the only way I know how to say it. But like you were saying earlier, there needs to be a West of the Brazos Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
There needs to be a group
Right.
to preserve this, because east side of the Brazos is leaving us in the dust.
Well, I went to a meeting with a group.
Because they've grouped
I
together.
called meetings to try to get a group to do that.
Miss Judy?
And the husband and the city,
the day off.
the husband and the city manager of West Columbia. She's been city manager for 20 years. Sitting there, he said, "Why would we want to get together with Sweetie? They're our enemies."
This ain't high school football.
I said, "You idiot."
Thank you.
I said, "They're your enemy for an hour and a half on Friday night
Yes.
once a year."
Once a year.
So you're going to ruin the whole economy of everything because y'all have a football enemy thing. You got to.
That's got to be one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard in my life.
Yes.
Well, I said that in a whole group of people. And he
And
got
the
he got
Brazoria
that.
Church is combined with the Sweeney Church
Right.
pastors. So we're going to
Yeah.
be sharing everything.
Well, the only thing you can do is write about the things that happened in the history a little bit at a time.
Sure.
If you really want to know, I think if somebody, and I don't think anybody really has gone to the land grant office and spend weeks and stuff.
I'd love to do that.
Yeah, you can find out all kind of things. They have all kind of. I went there once for about 5 hours, and my brain exploded.
So you do it in increments.
Right, yeah.
You got to remember, he's an Aggie veterinarian.
Right.
It must explode.
Well, that's like
Okay, so
James Austin Brown came here, and he had a cotton gin and all this stuff. He died. Well, his brother Brownlee gave him some land. Brownlee gave him the land grant, but I don't know where it is. Nobody does. And that has to be studied. And this place belonged. Brazoria was the Stevens plantation, and there's cisterns out here in the foundation of where the Stevens plantation was. Nobody knows jilt about the Stevens. They went back to Ohio, and nobody knows anything about them. Where I was raised was the Cummings plantation. Nobody knows anything about the Cummings. They went back to Illinois. Yeah, it's unreal. It's unbelievable. And I've never researched the Cummings. I don't know anything about them. I know my father bought 50 acres of land from them by sending them pictures from the desert out in West Texas, saying this is what the land looked like.
oh my goodness gracious, that's amazing.
Yeah, but you didn't do a little at a time.
Okay.
It's mind-boggling how much history's been forgotten. Mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, I sat there at night trying to go to sleep.
And I go ahead and see this little bitty cannon that's literally not any bigger than that.
Yeah.
And I think, you got to be kidding me.
No,
this is a famous story in Texas.
Yeah.
Of this little bitty thing.
And you're marginalizing it to this.
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody did a good job with PR, and we haven't. But it's all there. A lot of it's been lost by people that are dead. But it's available.
I think the main goal, and I think y'all are doing that, is to the history that we do have, preserve it.
Yes.
And make it known.
Make it known. Try to.
Yeah,
A little bit
and-
at a time.
We're
And
trying.
that was the biggest reason I reached out to y'all. Is I'm like, look,
Yeah.
it's here, and I know I'm not the only Texas history guy that's walking the face of the earth.
No.
I mean, Phil Collins is a Texas history guy, for goodness sake. But
And 75% of the stuff he has is not real.
correct.
There was a guy here in Brazoria that lived at Jane Long's Tavern, lived in that house where her thing is. That booger could make replicas of stuff and sell it. And about 10 items that he has that came from the Alamo were made here in Brazoria.
Really?
A
That's
friend of mine
amazing.
bought a sword in New Braunfels that had Sam Houston written on it and dated 1839 or something. And he paid $3,500 for the sword. It was made here in Brazoria by this guy.
Now, speaking of that, both my uncles used to be heavily into
Metal detector.
Yeah, there you go. And we found a Civil War sword in my grandmother's front yard.
Wow.
Yep.
You know, so I'm just like, what happened here?
Wait,
Yeah.
What troops were here? Was this an encampment? Did a battle happen here?
That's another book you
we
got
got-
to read called The Sea of Mud. You heard of that?
No, I haven't.
Okay. There's a pediatrician in Wharton that's an archaeologist and metal detective archaeologist. He wrote a book called The Sea of Mud. When Santa Anna was chasing Sam Houston, he took 400 soldiers across the Brazos River to San Jacinto. Colonel Urea was here in Brazoria with 300 soldiers. Colonel Finioso was in Fort Bend with 300 soldiers. Neither one of them crossed the Brazos River. They stayed because the river was flooded and they didn't go across, didn't make it to San Jacinto. So he went with 600 troops that didn't make it. When I'm talking, I tell him he emailed the two colonels and told them, go back to Victoria and regroup and come back and get me. I'm captured. They left to go back to Victoria. They go up the Bernard River and hit the east bank of the Bernard River. And it rains 15 inches one day and 15 inches the next day. They all get stuck in the mud. 100 years later, a lady's building a house in East Bernard, and she finds a cannonball in her front yard. And she goes to that pediatrician, and she said, I found this cannonball. It's a Mexican cannonball. He said, whoa. He goes up there. He finds 5 miles of artifacts of the Mexican army where they just abandoned everything and took off walking back to Mexico.
Whoa.
Totally lost in history for 100 years.
Oh my
It's a hard
goodness
book
gracious.
to read, but it's unbelievable history.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
Oh my goodness gracious.
Isn't that amazing?
I don't.
we've got a display over here that's in the Civil War, of cannonballs and different things that we
Oh
found
wow.
in Brazoria or around Brazoria.
We found a cannonball. We built a hill behind Ingrid, put a flagpole on, and found a cannonball there.
Wow.
And we have some cannonballs that we found that guys give us and stuff that aren't real cannonballs. One gave us one that was made out of steel, and I said, no, didn't have them then.
Oh wow. Is there any chance we could look around?
Certainly.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, something I was asked to do. There was a little bit of a mistake in the first video where Dr. Swibel referred to Generals Urea and Filisola as colonels, and he asked me to go ahead and remedy that little bit of an issue there. So they are General Urea and General Filisola. So just to eliminate any kind of confusion that may have caused. So again, I want to thank everyone for watching, and the next video up should be up very, very soon.